In tonight's news, the government comes under intense pressure to remedy the economy and speed up reforms during the lower house's debate of the government's policy statement. The Armed Forces General Command says U.S. soldiers are in Jordan for joint multinational annual maneuvers and have absolutely nothing to do with the Syrian crisis. And rescuers search for survivors after a massive explosion at Texas fertilizer plant that left up to 15 dead. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news, and here are the details. His Majesty the King received the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and Deputy Supreme Commander of the United Arab Emirates Armed Forces, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and UAE Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan. During the meeting, His Majesty the King discussed with the UAE officials bilateral ties and ways of boosting cooperation in various fields, as well as developments in Syria and efforts to achieve peace in the Middle East. His Majesty expressed his pride in the historic ties with the United Arab Emirates and appreciated the efforts of UAE President Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan in supporting Jordan in all circumstances, particularly as it bears huge burdens as a result of Syrian refugee influx into the kingdom. The United Arab Emirate officials highly valued His Majesty's efforts in the service of Arab causes with the aim of achieving peace in the region. For the third day in a row, the lower house tackled the government's policy statement in a marathon debate before a vote of confidence expected in the middle of next week. Over the past 3 days, deputies took the floor, airing their views on pressing domestic issues and priorities, including accelerating reform, fighting corruption, and addressing economic woes, poverty, and unemployment. But a key focus by lawmakers who addressed the session, held under Speaker Saad Hay al-Srour and attended by Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour and cabinet ministers, was to stop raising fuel and electricity prices. One lawmaker questioned the government's seriousness and ability to translate its programs into practice, as courageous steps are urgently needed to exit the economic crisis while the region around us is volatile and in flames. Another said citizenship, social equality and justice, fighting corruption and the supremacy of law are the gate to a better future. Some MPs signalled they might deny confidence in Mansour's government. The House Speaker adjourned the debate to Sunday. A source at the Armed Forces General Command said reports that the United States is sending 200 troops to Jordan have nothing to do with the Syrian crisis. It said the troops are the first of several batches of American soldiers who will take part in the annual Eagle Line military exercise held in the kingdom. It said the military games, in which troops from over 15 Arab and foreign nations will take part so far, are scheduled for the next weeks. The source said planning and preparations have been underway since Eagle Line 2 was held last May, involving forces from 19 Arab and foreign countries in the presence of the media. It said the Jordanian armed forces are engaged in training and joint maneuvers with many Arab and friendly nations. The source also stressed that the Jordanian armed forces had the ability to protect the kingdom's borders and defend its security and stability against any threat. It said the joint exercises carried out the year round are part of the armed forces' annual training program and absolutely had nothing to do with the existing situation in Syria. It said media reports and analysis were just inferential and speculative and would create the ground for rumors and unjustified linkage with events here and there. Up to 12,200 Syrians seeking refuge in the kingdom have crossed the border this week until this morning. Among the new arrivals were 43 injured and others sick people. An Armed Forces Command source said refugees were illegally entering from several points along the frontier. It said 2,450 refugees had crossed in the last 24 hours, many of them entire families with children, women and old people. The military source said border guards handled the influx at specially designated accommodation centres along the frontier. The latest arrivals received immediate aid before being transferred to refugee camps. Over to Syria. Syria is expected to top the agenda with U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel visit to the Middle East on Saturday. Hagel said the United States has an obligation to think through the consequences of any U.S. military move in Syria and be honest about potential long-term commitments. In Syria, meanwhile, rebels were battling government forces in Damascus, Aleppo and Deir ez-Zor, dismissing threats by President Bashar al-Assad. Khalal has more on the situation.
Syrian rebels keep up attacks on government forces in Damascus, Deir ez-Zor and Aleppo, dismissing President al-Assad's warning. This latest footage shows armed men taking cover behind a low wall as loud firing is heard. A man with an ammunition belt steps off camera as the others take position and begin firing across the wall. Two men are seen in the distance standing next to a cannon that is then fired, followed by the sound of a loud explosion. A man off camera is heard saying that this is heavy bombing of the city of Al-Mu'azzamiyah by Assad's forces from one of the 4th unit strongholds. This is what was left of residential buildings in the Damascus district. It was said that 20 buildings were destroyed and 1 was killed and 13 injured. The rebels intensified their attacks, dismissing threats by President Bashar al-Assad to defeat them. The opposition said Assad's remarks showed he is disconnected from reality. In a televised interview, al-Assad also accused the West of supporting al-Qaeda militants in Syria's civil war and warned they would turn against their backers and strike in the heart of Europe and the United States. Assad said Washington and Europe would regret supporting rebels in Syria.
As they supported al-Qaeda in Afghanistan in the early stages and later paid a dear price for it, they are now supporting it in Syria, Libya and other places and will pay a heavy price later in the heart of Europe and the United States.
He spoke a week after Syria's rebel al-Nusra Front, one of the most effective rebel forces battling his troops, formally pledged allegiance to al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri. France's Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius said that while there was no right way to end the civil war in Syria, a potential supply of arms to the opposition could balance powers on the ground and show Assad that he cannot win. Assad's forces have been fighting back across the country against rebels who have taken control of much of rural Syria and seized a provincial capital in March for the first time in 2 years of fighting. Khalal for the News at 10.
Rescue workers are searching the wreckage of a fertilizer plant in a small Texas city for survivors of an explosion that killed as many as 15 people. Authorities say they are treating the explosion as a crime scene, but implied that the result of the investigation may not be criminal, but an industrial accident. Zain Abu Sufa has the story.
West Town in Texas called for backup after a massive explosion at a fertilizer plant that left more than a dozen dead. The blast site is a possible crime scene, and the death toll could rise as search teams comb through the rubble of the demolished plant and surrounding homes. Police initially estimated that up to 15 people died in last night's blast, and more than 160 were injured. Even volunteer firefighters were missing. The fire broke out at the West Fertilizer Co. plant before the explosion rocked the town south of Dallas, destroying dozens of homes and spewing toxic fumes into the air, forcing the evacuation of half of the community.
Approximately 50 to 60 houses in a 5-block area radius were damaged, heavily damaged.
The plant had tanks of volatile anhydrous ammonia, including what initial reports said was a tanker-sized container like those hauled on freight trains. Emergency crews were moving from house to house in a search and rescue operation.
They are continuing to search for survivors or injured people to make sure that we get them the medical help if they are still there. That being said, I don't know how many folks may still be trapped in rubble.
Authorities say the cause of the fire which triggered the blast is still unknown. Investigators would now examine whether the blaze was the result of a foul play or a chemical reaction. President Barack Obama, who flew to Boston for a memorial service for victims of the Boston Marathon bombing, offered support and prayers to the victims in Texas. The explosion came 2 days before the 20th anniversary of a fire in Waco, north of West Town, which killed 82 members of a sect, ending a siege by federal agents. Zain Abu Sufa, News at 10.
We stay in the United States. President Barack Obama told a memorial service for the Boston bombing victims that we will find whoever carried out the attack that killed 3 people. Obama said Americans would not be intimidated by the twin blasts, which also injured 176 people in a crowd of thousands at the finish line of the world-famous marathon on Monday.
Our prayers are with the injured, so many wounded, some gravely. From their beds, some are surely watching us gather here today, and if you are, know this: as you begin this long journey of recovery, your city is with you, your commonwealth is with you, your country is with you. We will all be with you as you learn to stand and walk and, yes, run again. Of that I have no doubt. You will run again.
Security was heavy around the church, and police were also out in force around the bombing site, which remains closed off for several blocks as they search for evidence. Investigators are seeking to locate and talk to at least 2 men pictured in photographs taken before the 2 bombs exploded near the finish line of the Boston Marathon. Over to Pakistan. Former Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf fled a courtroom after judges ordered his arrest. Islamabad High Court ordered Musharraf be detained in connection with allegations that he committed treason in 2007 when he sacked senior judges and declared emergency rule as he struggled to hold on to power. The former army chief returned to Pakistan's political scene after nearly 4 years of self-imposed exile, after he decided to contest in the country's general elections in May. Election officials have barred Musharraf from running for the National Assembly earlier this week, effectively derailing his attempts to regain a place in politics by standing at the polls. Police made no immediate move to enforce the arrest order as Musharraf left the court flanked by his personal bodyguards. Venezuela's opposition submitted a request for a recount of votes to electoral officials. They alleged widespread fraud in a knife-edge election result that saw President-elect Nicolas Maduro win by just a margin of 265,000 votes. Maduro has accused his opponent, Capriles, of trying to stage a coup against his government and banned a planned march by the opposition in protest of the election result. The unrest just weeks after Chavez's death has laid bare the depolarization of a country split down the middle between pro- and anti-government factions and left its 29 million people on edge. Maduro is due to be formally sworn in tomorrow. The governments of Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Bolivia and Argentina, among others, have recognized Maduro's victory, but Washington has not. In China, a bird flu victim in Shanghai left hospital while China's health authorities said they have been investigating the possibility of human-to-human spread of the H7N9 virus. Authorities have slaughtered thousands of birds and closed some live poultry markets to slow the rate of human infection. But many aspects of this new variety of bird flu remain a mystery. China has warned that the number of infections, 82 so far, could rise. Most of the cases and 11 of the deaths have been in the commercial capital, Shanghai. The World Health Organization said that a number of people who have tested positive for the new strain of bird flu in China have had no history of contact with poultry, adding to the mystery about the virus that has killed 17 people to date. In our sports outlook, we begin with basketball. Dallas Mavericks defeated the New Orleans Hornets 99-87 in Texas. Mavericks' Darren Collison led his team by scoring 25 points, with Dirk Nowitzki adding 16 points and 9 rebounds. Al-Farouq Amini had 16 points and a career-high 20 rebounds for New Orleans, which will become the Pelicans next season. Eric Gordon also tallied 16 for the Hornets.
No longer call the focal point of the franchise a rookie, Anthony Davis.
British six-time Olympic Games gold medalist Chris Hoy is to retire from track cycling. The 37-year-old has decided not to continue until next year's Commonwealth Games at the Sir Chris Hoy Velodrome in Scotland. Hoy also won more than 50 medals of various hues at world level, including 11 World Championship golds. Over to tennis. World number 2 Andy Murray's many errors put him out of Monte Carlo Masters when he lost 2 straight sets to Swiss Stanislas Wawrinka in the 3rd round. Murray looked frustrated on court and picked up only 8 points on serve in the first set. The 17th-ranked Wawrinka reached the quarterfinals for the 2nd year in a row and will now face Frenchman Jo-Wilfried Tsonga. And Spaniard Rafael Nadal calmly continued his bid for a 9th consecutive crown with a 6-2, 6-4 victory over Philipp Kohl-Schreiber of Germany. Beginning champion or reigning champion Nadal notched up his 44th win in a row and set up a quarter-final encounter with 34th-ranked Grigor Dimitrov of Bulgaria.
Happy now winning 6-4. I think it's a great result for me. Very happy to be in quarter.
And for a check at the weather, partly cloudy and cold tonight. Rain is possible in the north of the country. Tomorrow will be a relatively cold day with a chance for scattered showers in the north, yet could extend to central regions. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk. The Gulf of Aqaba will be relatively cold tonight, but mild conditions are forecast for tomorrow. Winds will be northerly moderate to brisk and seas calm. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's again the reminder of our top stories. The government comes under intense pressure to remedy the economy and speed up reforms during the Lower House's debate of the government's policy statement. The Armed Forces General Command says U.S. soldiers are in Jordan for joint multinational annual maneuvers and have absolutely nothing to do with the Syrian crisis. And rescuers search for survivors after a massive explosion at a Texas fertilizer plant that left up to 15 dead. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Rad Liptush. Thanks for watching and have a good night.